My name is Karen, and today I'm going to be discussing the use of sign language as an alternative communication system, particularly for individuals with autism spectrum disorder. I'll be going over the skills needed for the learner to utilize this communication system, as well as advantages and disadvantages of the use of sign language. I'll also demonstrate the use of manned training with sign language. So as we know, sign language involves forming specific gestures with the hands combined with facial expressions and body postures to convey information in a visual format. Sign language is typically used by individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, but it can also be used by hearing individuals who have difficulties producing spoken language because of developmental delays, neurological or neurodevelopmental disabilities, or physiological disabilities. For individuals with ASD, sign language can be an effective alternative form of communication when vocal verbal behaviors are significantly delayed or when speech is unintelligible, or if the individual is physiologically unable to produce vocal verbal responses to communicate with others. As sign language was first used to assist people with ASD in communicating about 40 years ago, there's currently decades of research showing the effectiveness of teaching sign language as an alternative communication system. Initially, there was some resistance to the use of teaching sign for communication for people with ASD. There was concern that through the use of sign, people would no longer be motivated to use vocal verbal responding, and vocal verbal responding would actually be repressed. This concern was unfounded because as learners were taught signs, the signs were paired with verbal vocal models. If the learner was capable of speaking, the pairing actually facilitated the development of vocal verbal responding. There are some prerequisite skills the learner needs to have in order to be able to effectively learn and accurately execute sign language. First, the learner should be capable of nonverbal imitation. Sign language is typically taught through modeling, and this skill will help with the acquisition of the signs. That's not to say that signs cannot be taught through physical guidance, as there are blind and deaf learners who are able to produce and learn these signs through tactile imitation and physical guidance. However, the ability to observe and imitate can make sign acquisition occur at an acceptable rate. Additionally, the individual must have the adequate fine motor skills to be able to produce consistently recognizable signs. Without this ability, signs can become idiosyncratic, and even an audience trained in sign language might not be able to understand the individual's attempts at communication. There are advantages to sign language. It's readily accessible to the communicator. There's no supplemental materials that are needed. Nothing needs to be carried with the individual. The individual can also spontaneously and quickly communicate wants and needs and ideas. Sign language can be used to emit all verbal operants, and as such allows the individual to fully participate in social conversation. Sign language is also a fully developed language on its own, and as such, people using this form of communication are able to communicate through all verbal operants just as any individual using vocal verbal speech would. An obvious limitation of sign language is that the communicative partners require specialized training in order to understand the speaker. Typically, anyone interacting consistently with the signer would need to be trained in sign language. It's estimated that only about 400,000 people here in the United States consistently use and understand American Sign Language. And even with that, 10% of families who have children that use American Sign Language are actually trained in understanding. As you might know, this makes it very difficult for the signer to be able to communicate spontaneously with a large group of people. I've personally taught individual signs to early learners during MAN training. The process is the same as with vocal verbal manding, using prompts and shaping responses, except the responses are obviously physical as opposed to verbal. In the next section of my video, I'll demonstrate MAN training and the use of full physical, partial physical, and gestural prompts in teaching the sign popcorn. Popcorn. Very good. Popcorn. Yep, there it is. That's popcorn. Popcorn. Yes. Excellent. Popcorn. Popcorn. Nice job. All on your own. More.